Well, hey everybody, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the 13th day of April, 2023. Let me make sure my volume's up. I'll turn it up just a little bit more. Well, it's the 13th. I was born on October 13th. My granddaughter was born on July 13th. My youngest grandson was born on January 13th. And then the middle child, our first grandson, was born on July 31st. So just an inversion of that. So interesting connection. And it's a balanced one. I'm 6 months, or rather 6 months between the latest grandson in January and the first grandchild, the granddaughter, in July, and I'm in the middle, 3 months in between the two of them exactly. So it's an interesting pattern there that happened. No, I'm not sure why, but it did. So that was pretty cool. Anyway, 13's my lucky number. That's why whenever I take an extra card, I'll take the 13th one, is because 13 has figured so prominently in my life in weird ways that I don't know. I just think I like numerology. I just think it's interesting. So let's go ahead and take a rune here to get started from the Elder Futhark bag here. Well, come on. I let them go through my fingers until there's one left, but then sometimes, like 3 or 4 want to stay there. It's like, no. One. We have Fehu. First rune of the Elder Futhark. Fehu is about cattle or wealth, but it indicates transaction, how well we transact with people. It can be success. It can be the beginning of something. But basically, I look at it in terms of transaction. Again, when the reason why it's about cattle and relating cattle to wealth is eventually, as the tribes got cattle, they were movable. Plus, you could trade them for other things, and so that's how I think the two got related. But how are we going to manifest? It's also the sending rune in magic, and so you can chant Fehu when you're about to cast the spell. You can either hold the rune in your hand or have it on the altar or whatever, or the workspace wherever you're doing your spell, or you're working. And Fehu, just chanting Fehu will send that energy, that intention into the universe. So a lot of power with the rune Fehu. Let's take a look at the Geomancy elemental runes. We'll throw them down and see what we have. We're going to put them in the order of fire, air, water, and earth. There's fire. Got 2 for that. 1 for water. 2. Oh, well, we have Albus. Now, Albus is the complement of Rubeus. Rubeus is the more evil intent. It's the it'd be like a misuse of force is what Rubeus would be. So then conversely, Albus would be wisdom. It'd be the sage. It'd be clarity. Having that higher awareness. Realistically, you're really looking at the as above rune here for that below, the as so below rune with Rubeus. You can see that in terms of higher awareness versus ego. And so with Rubeus, ego's running amok, and it's a misuse of force and trying to control things from a personal standpoint with a personal agenda. Whereas Albus is more, you're looking at the situation from a higher perspective, and you can see the bigger picture. Whereas Rubeus is more focused on what Rubeus needs. And yes, I know they're also the names of Harry Potter characters, but they're not. They're originally, that's not what they were. These because Geomancy's been around far longer than Harry Potter. So anyhow, so I think it was kind of delightful that she chose some of the names, from this. I know there was one where they're going up into another room. Fortuna Major, I think is what and there was a woman that was on a picture. There was a portrait, big huge portrait. And so they they're using the code words Fortuna Major. Well, that's also a geomancy rune. So it was kind of cool that she used those names in her as for characters and for other things in her books. But Albus is definitely about clarity and wisdom and seeing the bigger picture. So when you're transacting today with others, you want to do it from that standpoint. So let's go ahead and take the cards here. I'm going to shuffle just a little bit more, and then we'll cut the deck, and then we'll get going here on the cards. We'll see what they have to offer. See if maybe they take the runes in a little bit different direction. Now on Monday, we were looking for creative solutions. We'll see if this is an extension of that. On its surface, it seems like it might be. How are we going to transact all of that? And are we going to do that from, a better perspective than one that's just simply ego-based? Let's cut the deck. Take the bottom half. Well, let's see what we have here. We've got one from each grouping of the tarot. We have one from the minor arcana, one from the major, and one from the court. Court is technically part of the minor arcana, but I tend to separate it out when I'm looking at a reading. Court cards are generally, they're either the individual on the card. So in this case of the Queen of Wands, we're looking at an older woman in authority. You can look at it that way, or you can look at the qualities therein. She's strict, she's generous, she's talented, she's successful, basically. Very dynamic. Wands is the fire element, and so anything having to do with wands or the fire element is going to be dynamic. It's going to be initiating, motivated, someone who's a leader, something like that. You can look at in terms of maybe Aries energy. Oftentimes you'll see, in fact, here you see lions. That would be Leo, so that would be Leo energy on here on the Queen of Wands. But a lot of strength involved as well. If you look at the card of strength, you see the goddess holding the head of the lion in her hands, and his tongue is out, and he's just so happy that she's petting him and all of that and loving on him and stuff. And it's basically taming the wild within, right? Well, she's definitely tamed the wild within. and there's her little kitty cat right there, her little familiar. But we start out with the Four of Wands, then we'll move to the Tower, and then we'll move to the Queen. And then we'll see if we want to keep them in that order. But I think maybe let's just read it that way to begin with. Here we have another type of transaction with Fehu. And with Albus, we'll incorporate Albus into this as well, and the wisdom and all of that. Here we see 4 staffs, 4 poles, 2 on each side, or at least appearing to be on each side. And I'm gonna spend a little time talking about this card. You see a garland here that's crossed above. We see the dual line of demarcation where this is then, this is, or this is now, this is then, or this is now, this is the future. And you see 2 people here that have clearly gotten married. They're holding their, the woman is holding her bouquet high. The man is holding 2 bouquets high. You see people behind. Those are the people that were there at the wedding or the hand fasting. You see the castle in the distance. This could be royalty that's getting married. This could be some kind of, and then you see the arched bridge over here. And that's the bridge to their future, basically. But let's talk about the 4. 4 is about structure. It's about foundation. It's about it's about grounding. So anything that keeps you structured or in order. It could be routine. It could be anything that's structured, right? And we see that structure there. But let's talk about that. We have two poles on either side. Now, what we have is a transaction happening here. Okay, it's a marriage, and that's a transaction. Now, it could be done for love. It could be done to unite kingdoms in this case. We don't know that. But there's definitely a transactional quality about it. Now, you look up here at the garlands. I'm going to get to these in a second. Let's look up here at the garlands. So they're in an X pattern. Now, the X in the Elder Futhark is called Gebo, and that's balanced energy exchange. It's also marriage and partnership, but it's an agreement that's done in balance. And when you look at the four poles here, you've got two on each side in balance. Now, we can look at that as a balanced relationship is forming. An agreement has been made. A marriage has been transacted, basically. But what we can also look at these, since they're evenly spaced from each other, we could look at the polarity within each individual coming into balance. And once that happens, once all of that agreement has been made within the self, you can then make that transaction or that agreement to come into a relationship with somebody else. And so there seems to be a lot of agreement in this card. That's part of the new foundation and the new structure that they're about to embark upon in this castle behind them. Okay? So again, it's done in complete clarity. It's done in complete wisdom. To know what's the best course of action here. Do we unite the kingdoms, or is this just because they met and they fell in love? We don't know. But at the same time, we do know that something new is developing. Something new has been transacted and something new is beginning. And this is why I said we might want to move them around. Here we have the tower. The tower is about disruption and change that's catalytic. It's about rebalancing things. That's why I say maybe we should have started with that one. This is the 16th card of the Major Arcana. You're looking at a 7 numerology for that. 6 and 1 is 7. And so you can almost imagine the scales right here, can't you? You have the catalytic presence of the lightning bolt coming in, blowing the top off the tower, starting a fire. The man and the woman, it looks like a man and a woman, in fact, they look very much like the people here. So maybe we want to leave it here. So maybe there was a little bit of a disruption after they got married. Maybe things weren't as settled as they thought. And so something has happened to blow the lid off things. And we don't know that they're falling to their death. We just know that they're jumping out of the tower to get away from the fire. They could be landing, say there's a moat around the castle. Maybe they're landing in the water. Maybe it's not as big of or tall of a situation as we think it is. Maybe there's somebody down there to catch them. We don't know this. So we're having to assume some things. But we don't necessarily have to assume the worst here. But it's about letting go and letting things come to rest, basically. Now maybe that happens when they fall down to the ground or into the water or wherever they're going here. But they're basically everything is shifting for them. Everything has something catalytic has happened. Maybe some truth has happened. Maybe some big change has happened. But something is there to take you outside the comfort zone that you thought you had here, and it's going to blow things up a little bit. And we're going to let things settle out before we understand the truth of something. Now, it's possible that from there, this is a 7 and this is a 4. So that's 11. Right now, we're at 11 numerology with these two cards. Now, the 11 is the master number. We don't have a number for the queen. And so basically, we're looking at some awakening, some enlightenment, and that's going to align well with Albus. So again, we thought we had it together, but then something happens to blow the lid off of everything. And now everything's got to settle out. Everything's got to the truth of it all has to come out. And at that point, we have the Queen of Wands. Again, we can either see that either a queen is going to come in, a strong woman in authority is going to come in with some solutions. I'm going to take another card. We need to know more here. Maybe we need to know more about what happened with the tower. but for now, let's just talk about her. It's going to take some, maybe some talent, maybe some ability to. I mean, she's looking toward the future here. You see a sunflower, Slava Ukraini, in her left hand. You see that's a symbol for fire as well. But bless Ukraine. We see her little familiar there. There's a spiritual aspect to her because you see the three pyramids over here. You see again the lions here and up here on her the back part of her throne. There seems to be possibly some Ouroboros above, but I can't tell that for sure because it's cut off there. So I don't know if there's the circular where the snake comes around or the salamander comes around. In the wands, it would be the salamander comes around and grabs its tail. So you have a circle. We don't see that for sure here. But we do see two lions up here with a sunflower in between. So at minimum, it's suggesting that whatever has happened to bring some truth to bear with the tower, because I usually interpret the tower that way. Something has come out, something's come out, something's come up, some truth has come out. And so basically it's going to take some a dynamic individual here to understand the situation and to make decisions about it from a standpoint of authority. She's going to have to take, if we're talking about a woman, and if we're talking about this woman here, because this could be the woman here. If we're talking about that, it may be that she's the one that's going to come up with the solution to the problem. Or she's the one that's going to be out on top. Maybe it was the man that was deceiving in some way. Maybe the transaction that happened was not the best one to have. Maybe you didn't have all the facts. So if we look at this from a purely transactional situation, you thought you had your ducks in a row and then something happened to let you know that that wasn't true. So you either go to a wise mentor, a woman, or you take the woman, if it's a man and a woman in terms of the transaction, the woman may be the one with the solution. She may be the one that exercises her own inner authority and says, "Stop! We're gonna redo this." So whether it's really about a marriage that runs into some trouble and maybe breaks up, or the woman starts calling the shots a little more and lays down the law. I mean, it could be something like that. Maybe the guy's out running around or what have you, doing things she doesn't know about, and then it all sort of comes apart. It could be something like that. But the initial transaction that was in play just isn't working at this point. And it's going to take some higher wisdom to figure that out. And I really think that sometimes, you look at what happens, and as bad as it might be, it can provide the catalyst for other kinds of truth to come in, right? Where when all the dust is settled, you can see what you've got left. And maybe what you have left from it is a female person in the equation that's standing up and saying, nope, we're going to do this another way. And you're not going to, whatever grift you've pulled, you're not pulling anymore, right? So, I mean, it could be something like that. Let's take the 13th card. Well, we have the 6 of Wands, so we're staying in the Wands because we've got a run on Wands here. And I think we can agree that the Tower is very fire-oriented. So I think that we've got fire element here throughout this entire reading. And it makes sense. I'm not sure. Let me see if I have some notes here somewhere to see if Fehu is fire, and I'm not sure. Yeah, fire. Yeah, it is. It's a fire element rune. So we're dealing with the fire element today, and if this is bad enough, maybe some conflict is coming out of it. But at some point, someone's going to have to use their inner authority, and it seems to be like maybe it's the woman, or you're seeking out some counsel from someone, from a wise mentor who happens to be a woman. But here we have. It seems to we have the king coming back from some kind of a thing. Well, I don't know, so a battle maybe. He's not in battle attire though. So maybe it was a meeting. And so he's victorious, he's got his wreath up there, so he's been victorious, and everybody's walking along with him. So basically, in the Six of Wands, we're looking at somebody who is got the support of people around him, and basically, I'm not sure how this fits, other than we have a 4 and a 6, which the 6 and the 4 are inverted from one another. Whatever's happened, though, it suggests that you have support from others. So maybe the thing that has come in, the truth that's come in, maybe it was from some other source. And now you have, I hate to keep bringing this down to the man and the woman in the equation. I don't want to do that. But maybe it's not going to, maybe it's just going to be a fourth card in the reading. I don't see where it's going to modify anything here. Basically, once you've gone and gotten some advice, maybe, after what's going on here, and you got it from a strong woman in your life, someone who's successful or someone with experience in whatever's going on here in the tower, maybe then at some point you can move together in harmony once again. Maybe you find out that you have more support than you realized, and maybe the harmony is not, maybe it's just an inner harmony. Maybe this is not that, maybe this is just not going to work. And the truth has come in, blown the lid off of everything, and it's all been revealed. And so what you thought you had here, you really didn't have in terms of the transaction. And again, it doesn't have to be a marriage. It can be a partnership of some kind, or just an agreement between two people, between you and a business, or between two entities, let's say it that way, instead of two people. And although it looked like it was going to be a good thing, and you thought you had your ducks in a row, and you could look at the 4 poles that way, you each had your own ideas about things, and you thought you had them, you were blending them together, and you thought this was going to be a good collaborative effort. Maybe you find out that it's not, and you need to get some advice from somebody. Or if you've already done that, maybe this could represent that you've gotten some support, you've figured out where your support is. That might actually be the better one here, and that way then the tower could be between the 4 and the 6. So once you've discovered that you do have support after this awful thing that's happened, and then now you're ready to assert your own authority. And it seems to me that this is going to be probably the woman in it. Maybe this is the one who, in other words, if this is a transaction between someone and a business, this could be the customer ultimately, and the business is just not telling you the truth about something. Maybe you hired a contractor to come and do some work for you, and maybe you've discovered that they're an unsavory contractor, that they really don't have. I've seen this happen multiple times in my life where, in fact, we hired somebody one time, and then as the jobs progressed, and we discovered he didn't even have a contractor's license. And so we're like, oh boy, get off our property. And we had to finish the job ourselves. And my husband did. We were shocked. He was referred to us by a coworker of mine, someone who was a friend, basically, we thought anyway, was a friend. But this guy had gone around and done some building projects for other people in the area. We saw them. They looked good. And I don't know, either they knew and it didn't bother them, or they didn't know ever. but the thing wasn't going right. And we're watching it and we're going, oh boy. Turns out he stole lumber from us. He went and got a unit of lumber and took the best pieces. He took 44 pieces off that pile, that unit of lumber, and we drove by his house and we saw them sitting out there. And so I said to him, I called him up. I said, you need to bring my lumber back or I'm calling the police. And so he did. And I said, and then you get off my property. And so we paid him for what he had done so far. He had done not a good job. The building was not square. And so we had to fix that. And basically each individual section of the walls had to be redone individually. You couldn't just simply, do so many, 2x4s and, no. It had to all be sculpted basically. And I mean, this was ridiculous, so it's one of those things where you think you're doing the right thing. And we learned a lesson there, a big lesson. You say, let me see your contractor's license before. I want to check you out. I'm going to call the contractors board to make sure there's no complaints on you. You have to do those things. Well, I mean, this realistically, we found out we had support, the same sort of thing. But ultimately, I was the one. My husband was so furious he couldn't even talk to the guy. He was worried, he was going to really go off on him. He didn't want to do that, right? So it was me that ended up calling the guy and taking care of it. It was for a karate studio is what it was for. So you could see why we needed things to be done just so, right? It was either going to be a workout area or we were moving our karate school to our house, which is what we ultimately did. And so we needed this to actually work, Our lease in the town was ending and we had to have a building. And by golly, we were working on it till 4:30 in the morning. The day students were coming. They were coming out to the house. So it was like, oh my God, But it was traumatic. It was completely traumatic, So anyway, this could actually be a reading that describes what happened there. But I'm telling you this because things can happen. You can think that you are doing the right thing, and if you don't really have your ducks in a row, which we clearly did not. We thought we did, but we didn't. And so ultimately we got them in a row, and we discovered that we had support. We had friends that came over and helped us with things. And some were in the martial arts field, some were not. Some were, one was a student and another black belt. So we had help. We had assistance. We weren't alone in our trauma. And I think that that's what this is saying, that if you've got a transaction going today, that irrespective of what that is, something may happen or something has possibly happened that has given you some pause at minimum, or it could upend everything, and you need to let things settle out. You need to listen to the 7 numerology of this card and allow the pans of the scales to settle out and see what you have left, see what's salvageable, see what you need to rebuild, see what you need to do, and then realize that you're not alone in this. You've got support. Reach out, and then eventually, though, you're going to have to make the decision you need to make, or maybe part of the support that you have is with an older woman in authority who may be able to give you some guidance or advice. Maybe it's an attorney if it's a legal situation that results. Maybe it's an attorney, or maybe if you're a woman and this has happened to you, in the end you're going to come out the victor, is what this could be saying. You're going to be the one that asserts your authority and says, look, this is how things are going to be now, and that's just that. And which is kind of what I said to the guy, the so-called non-contractor we had hired to build this studio for us. And we didn't like where we were, and we wanted to just be out. And we just thought, well, why don't we put it there? And it was just a small school, it wasn't like this major business thing we had going. It was a small school, and that's what we wanted. And just a handful of students, and that's what my husband wanted to do, right? And so that's what we did. And it was a great experience, ultimately. But at the same time, you're trying to do something, and maybe you overlook something, or someone's concealing something, that you need in that process. And if you've hired them, and Fehu's suggesting that this is a transaction of some kind, you've got to be able to see things from a bigger perspective. The 7 numerology is very important here. 6 and 7 then would be 13, which brings us back to a 4. Which again is structure, restructuring everything and doing it from the standpoint of Albus, which is a higher perspective, and so I think that this is just something that could be happening in your life right now, and if it is, try to see the reading from a broad perspective in terms of what that might be. But the idea that you came together in an agreement that didn't work out, that some truth came out and you're like, oh crap, but you realize that you do have support there, so reach out to people, but then in the end, whether you're talking about maybe the maybe an attorney that you're having to reach out to, or somebody in your life with more experience, or this is you taking the bull by the horns and saying, this is how this is going to be. And personally, that's the way I want to read this. But just in case, that was prior to pulling this card. But I do think that at some point, if this is probably a reading for a woman, and who's gotten into some kind of an agreement with somebody that is just not working out, but don't feel alone. You've talked to your friends. There may be somebody that, as a friend, that can say, hey, this is a person you should talk to, which could be the queen. Or at the end of the day, you're the queen and you're the one calling the shots once again. And you're a little more savvy, a little wiser, and a little more watchful. She's looking toward the future. And so there's an eye toward the future here, where I'm not going to be fooled again by whatever nonsense went on here. So it could be something like that we're talking about here. Again, in terms of Monday's reading, you've got some creative conflict, you've got some transformation, joy with Laetitia, transformation with Hagalaz, a creative conflict with the 5 of Wands, new perspective with the Ace of Swords, and the Magician manifesting the new perspective. And to me, I called that creative solutions to a problem. Maybe this is just one more example of that. I don't feel that this is an extension of Monday's reading, but maybe it's just another example of finding creative solutions like we had to on Monday. But this one is maybe less about that and understanding the truth of something. That sometimes when you get into a situation, you think but you don't, and then you find out, and it's just like this sinking feeling. I know, because we had it. It's like, oh geez, what are we going to do now? And but we got to work and we took care of it ourselves, and building's still standing. Now it's just filled with a bunch of stuff. So it became storage after we stopped teaching. So anyway, it was a workout space for us for a while, but then we started to store stuff out there, and so now that's what it is. And so it's kind of cool, but still, it still has all the window or all the mirrors up and all the karate stuff up all over everywhere, so you can still see it when you go in there, but just no space to work out anymore. But anyway, I think that's it for today. And again, this just seems to be a week where we're looking at things maybe from new perspective, and in this case, something significant happened to shake you out of your what you thought was true, and now not so much. And you just need to realize that you're not alone. You have people around you that may be able to give you some advice and or at least to commiserate with you and support you until you can then get out beyond it and start calling the shots again from a position of authority. So the truth coming out isn't necessarily a bad thing overall. It's just something that may cause some upset and some worry, and try to figure out, okay, what's my next move? But there's always a next move, and in some way, and you just need to have the inner authority to take that. So anyhow, I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming by. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back. And we do this. I do this Mondays and Thursdays, and where we just take a look at how runes and the tarot cards can influence our lives and our decisions and how we see things. And not really about predictions, but at the same time, sometimes it kind of squeaks in a little bit here and there, just based on what I see on the cards and stuff. So. Check out the blog. I've been having some issues with it over at Stepping Aside. You have to be sure when you put the web address in over there at Stepping Aside, it's imsteppingaside.com, but you have to have the HTTPS / and or no, well, somewhere I forget where the colon is. You have to have that. You have to have the S on it, so it's a secure site. I was having issues with my SSL certificate, and I don't know why. We think maybe, though, we spent some time on it yesterday with my web host service, and it looks like a couple of plugins might have been the real problem. And so we got rid of those, and things seem to be working well. I got rid of some other stuff, and I suspect that they were causing problems just in and of itself. In other words, it was ridiculous. And so I'm not going to deal with it anymore, right? And so I became the queen, and I said, that's enough. And so I fixed a lot of it. So check that out. There is a link to the website underneath the video. If you click on more just below the video, it'll open up a box and it shows a bunch of stuff. It'll show the website address up top. It shows and I've got to make sure here that I have the HTTPS part on there as well. And then there's a discussion on what I'm doing here. And then down below, there's more links. So check that out if you want to follow me anywhere. I generally follow back, unless I don't see it. But check out my work there on the blog. I publish new stuff. It comes out in the midnight hour every Sunday morning. The week ahead posts, the daily correspondences for the coming week for Work of Magic post. And also there's an Exploring Tarot series that I'm doing. I do that on every week, aside from this. And so that comes out. I also publish this stuff over on Substack, plus some other things as well. And Medium, I do some stuff over there. And also Patreon. So if you want to follow me on any of those places, that'd be awesome. And have a good weekend, and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.